I'm Joel Hynek. My profession is visual effects supervisor for film and TV. I help the director realize the visual effects for his film or TV show. And so I supervise the creation of the visual effects, watching over the various artists that are putting it together or the special effects people to make it all work out and be consistent in its look. I've worked on a lot of movies. I've been in the business for a while. My first film, I guess of note, was Predator, the first one and the second one. Other films like What Dreams May Come, got an Academy Award for that. I started out on The Matrix, working out the bullet time for proof of concept that got the movie greenlit. I designed and directed the Columbia logo, for instance, the current Columbia logo, and then other films like Jumper, The Mummy 3, Stealth are some of the films that I've worked on.
Hey everyone, before we dive in, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by BetterHelp, online therapy that fits your life. And honestly, it couldn't be more relevant to the video we're about to share with you. Our guest in this video is a master of visual effects. He creates stunning illusions on screen. But when it comes to mental health, there's no editing or special effects to cover up what we neglect. Your life's day-to-day craziness can take a serious toll, and let's face it, life isn't slowing down. So whether you're looking for Bigfoot or just handling day-to-day stress, mental health isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. When your mind's in the right place, everything else comes much easier. And that's why we're excited to partner with BetterHelp. It's professional therapy designed to fit your life. No waiting rooms, no complicated schedules, just licensed therapists ready to connect wherever you are, at home, in your car, or even in the wilderness, if you have a cell connection. Click the link in the description or head to betterhelp.com/Bigfoot Revealed to get matched with a therapist in just a few clicks and receive 10% off your first month. Take care of yourself out there, and we'll see you on our next adventure.
The camouflage effect, or the cloaking effect for Predator came about back in New York in the late 80s. They wanted something that would be visible but invisible. And so we had a red suit and we put somebody in it and we had them run around in Griffith Park and then tried all kinds of things. And this was in the days of optical printing. There was no computer-generated imagery in those days. And so I finally worked out a method of creating inlines. I had previously worked on a method for creating outlines of any mat that you had, of any shape. A mat is a high contrast image of something. And in a mat set, you have a black core and a clear core. The clear core is, say, of a human would be all black except where the human is, that would be clear. And the black core is just black where the human is and all clear around that. And with those two things, you can create an inline or outline simply by shifting, making 4 passes on the optical printer, shifting it northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest. That will create an outline or an inline. And so the idea would be to just increase that amount of shift each time and then use the previous one to burn that larger one out, so that you then ended up with this distinct set of clear core mats of the inline set. But the thing that made this work was being able to create a series of concentric inline mats. So if you had the mat of a human, you could break it down into 12, say, or of inlines, and then into each one of those would put the background, the clean background, slightly reduced, and then the next inline reduce it more, and then more. So it kind of looked like a moving Fresnel lens. So when we were shooting in the jungle of Mexico, we'd shoot our actor running around in a red suit, pull a mat from him, then shoot the same shot as close as we could, matching camera motion, didn't have to be exact, of a clean background with a wider lens. So we had that to work with. There was no inspiration from the natural world for the cloaking effect, the predator camouflage effect. It was in the script, and we just tried a whole bunch of different things, whatever we could think of, and it all just kept looking exactly like that. It wasn't until, in fact, the day before the producer, Joel Silver, was going to come to New York and see how we were doing, that we realized we hadn't really gotten anything to show him yet. So that's when the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll take this outline technique, turn it into an inline technique, and we'll try that. So I just laid it all out on paper, gave it to our night optical printer cameraman, came back in the morning, and there were 2 shots of the effect. And, we remember looking at it on the Steenbeck, where you can run film back and forth and look at it. And Joel Silver's looking at it. We're all in the room there, and he asks my boss, Richard Greenberg, Richard, what do you think? And Richard says, it's good, Joel, it's good. And so then Joel says, okay, and hops on the phone to John Davis, the producer, and says, okay, we're going to make this movie. Let's do it. And it worked just like that. I had no idea that the predator effect would be hanging around this long. I really liked it, and we used it again in Predator 2, but Predator 2 was not very popular, and we therefore thought that, okay, that's it. There's no more Predator effect ever going to be seen again. But I was wrong.
Yeah, something hard and fast. What the heck was that? Did you see that?
Sam's been checking it out.
What the heck is it? There's something taken off right there. Did you see that?
Yeah.
My initial reaction to the video that you sent me that Barb Shupe shot from her forest walk, I was startled. I was amazed, really, and racked my brain trying to figure out what it could be other than an actual live predator effect. I thought that, well, possibly it could be a compression artifact that, like an MPEG movie would do. But the fact that there was a branch in front of it, compression effects are 2D. They happen in 2D space. So that branch should also have been affected, but it wasn't. And also the movement's very smooth, really. So, and that, which is not generally like a compression effect. They're very erratic. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe this is, maybe somebody created this effect, in the visual effects world, which is certainly possible. But then it comes down to the chain of custody of this, of the footage. And was there any chance that it could have, that Barb could have let it get out of her hands, and then somehow it gets put back into her camera? I don't see, and of course I know that you had checked the metadata on it and it all seemed to match, so that doesn't seem likely. Could this be faked, and if so, how, and how much would it cost? The time, 2014, things are pretty sophisticated in the digital world. I don't think this would be very hard to do at all. It would require a little animation of something that can take the bits that are there and make them move with it. Matching the texture that's there, you would take bits of the image that is there and create a series of a progression of images, basically. And this seems to clearly be using image bits that are there. So it would take somebody with a set of mats, and in each one of them put a little something different, and then animate them more or less the same way, which you could do in Nuke or After Effects, and diminish them. It wouldn't be very hard. It would probably take a day or two. And in terms of cost, $500, $1,000. It wouldn't be that hard to do. The hard part would be getting it back into the presumed footage without any indication, in the metadata that it had been tampered with. I'm looking at the footage, and the textures that are there that are moving match very well the textures that are in the background. So either this is, a real cloaking device and it's working just like the predator effect, where it's using the background image to being manipulated, just like in the predator effect. I can see here there's a little dark spot that you might say is his head, and it moves down as if he's crouching. So that would just basically be a translation of a bit of the image, and then it gets blurry, as if there's motion blur, which is also not that hard to do. But 2014, a little harder maybe than it is today. And it's still using bits. There's those white bits that aren't there at first and then come about. That's kind of interesting, but there are also white bits in the background. So everything there is also represented in the background in one way or the other. So it looks like it's either a real predator effect or a visual effect. If this effect had been done by somebody, I know it's very hard to keep something like this a secret. Generally, somebody wants credit for it, I guess, and would leak it to their friend, and then it would leak to somebody else, or they would just come out and say, "Hey, I did that." But you haven't heard anything like that, I assume, and which makes me think that, well, someone doesn't want credit if this is faked, or if this is some kind of very strange compression effect, which I really don't think it is. I have a background a bit in the paranormal. My father was a scientist who studied UFOs, so I've been around all my life strange things happening, and I keep an open mind. Clearly, if one is to eventually find out what is behind the whole UFO phenomenon, it's going to be something that shakes the foundations of physics. It's going to be a whole new aspect of physics that we had no idea what it is, something like that. And so this could be real. It just could be something that we have no idea about what it is, or what it came from, or if it's a projection from another dimension, or something coming from some unseen world. It's just an open book, really.
What I saw was the black head popped up and ran. What the camera picked up looks like something from a Predator movie. And I was pretty shocked by that.
Barb does say she saw something black, which clearly not seen in this footage. It could be that the cloaking is directional, and perhaps she saw something, an aspect of the background from her vantage that was black coming through, whereas the camera, not being exactly where she is, saw something different. That could be. Considering whether this could be an actual practical effect, I did think about that, actually, and thought, maybe it's somebody, or it's perhaps some kind of some reflective material, like silvered mylar, for instance, that is hanging there and then dropped, and then also probably pulled along with wires, so that it falls down and then appears to recede into the background. I could see that possibility of it being a physical effect, but the edges are so smooth. I think it'd be a tough one to pull off, but I wouldn't say it's impossible.
Lieutenant, welcome home. This way to debriefing.
Harry Ward Craig, Captain, United States Navy, 043431.
Captain, would you come right this way?
My dad was J. Allen Hynek, and he worked for the Air Force. I mean, he was an astrophysicist. He was an astronomer at Ohio State. But the Air Force approached him in 1948 to help them identify UFOs. They were getting swamped with UFO reports, and they just wanted it to go away. And so they asked him to identify as much as he could, and actually put a lot of pressure on him to identify things that really couldn't be identified and shouldn't be identified. But they wanted to stamp everything like a weather balloon or Venus or whatever. But he was a skeptic at first, but then he soon realized that there was something going on here that was a very similar phenomenon being seen over and over again, and then decided to study it, that it was worthy of scientific study. And he encountered, this obstruction by the government that sort of was preventing any investigation further into what was going on. And in fact, there really were these men in black that would often, by the time my dad or his colleagues got to a UFO sighting location, the people there would say, oh, well, these men in black came and they took those photographs, or they took that physical thing. So that was a real thing, and he was quite frustrated by the men in black. And I also asked him, well, so do you really think the government is keeping a secret here, that there's something that they know that they're not coming forth with? And he said, well, could very well be, but it's nearly impossible for something to remain a secret forever. One way or another, almost always something interesting, if it's being kept secret, will come out one way or the other. And so this phenomenon, this real-life predator, if someone did fake it, you would think that it would have leaked by now, somehow. For Barb Shupe to have been in on this, if it was a faked thing, she would have had to gone through quite a lot of preparation and acting lessons because she's very genuine in her response. It doesn't feel at all, faked. But yes, she would have had to do extensive preparation to set up the timing, to have the people there with her, and some accomplice, in the background, say it is a physical effect, or some cue to say, okay, and she's going to react to something that isn't there and say that she saw something black moving. That's a good point. Yes, no, there was no cameraman there. She was a cameraman. It was on the end of her walking stick, and she was just, I guess, moving it, almost not even thinking about what she was pointing at, which adds some credibility to it, really. Or maybe she really was a good actor, and moved the camera in a realistic fashion, not looking like she intended to capture anything.
What kind of pre-production would have been involved in something like this?
Well, okay, there's two ways to think about that. One, it was physical effect, which would have required a fair amount of experimentation, and at least one rehearsal out there in the wild. I'm going to be here, and that's going to be there, and it's going to happen when I'm having, the camera pointed at it. So there has to be coordination with another person, at least one other person, to do that. It's a lot of prep, really. If it was a visual effect, then she set it up really well. She would have had in her mind her plan to react to something that wasn't there, and then have the footage altered, have the metadata altered, have it put back into her iPod Touch. All very hard to do. And the fact that she had people there with her that she was talking to nonchalantly when this happened, makes it hard to believe that it was faked.
We had to put it on a bigger screen to get a bigger look, and at that point I realized, okay, this is something that my camera can't do.
Having just looked at the footage of Barb describing what she did with her iPod Touch, looking at it on a bigger screen afterwards, and it not being the thing that she saw is really interesting. But what seems to come through pretty clearly is her genuineness. It really seems like she believes what she saw and also believes what the camera saw. It's really interesting that they're not the same thing. But if it is really a cloaking device, it's not unusual for a person to see something from one perspective and a camera to see something from another perspective, even if it's the same thing. If it actually was a cloaking device, I can see why she would see one thing and the camera would see something else. It is odd that they seem to be so different in her description of it. Maybe it wasn't the same thing. Maybe there were two things. As she mentioned in the documentary, that her mother was there and saw something else. So maybe it was two different things that were just happening at the same time. You certainly don't get the feeling, looking at her talk, that she had any kind of deceit in mind, or that she would have planned this somehow. It just doesn't seem possible. The human eye and a camera definitely don't perceive things the same way. In terms of frame rate, in terms of motion blur, they're not the same. And also there's the well-known phrase that you see what you expect to see, and you don't see what you don't expect to see. So something happens, something triggers the eye, and your perception of it may not be what it actually was, but what you are expecting it to be. Looking at this original clip and looking at the metadata, seeing that it's IMG 2927, shot September 11th, 2014 at 3:09 in the afternoon, or 15:09. Yeah, this would be very hard to fake. I don't quite see how you would do it, actually. Somebody trying to fake this metadata would have to be very savvy with the ins and outs of QuickTime. I don't know anybody who could do this, for instance. But I suppose it's possible somehow, but I don't know how, that's for sure. One of the things that does strike me about this is the similarity between Barb's paranormal sighting and UFO sightings that I have, read about in reports, in that the people are very sincere and you believe that they believe. It's something that makes you feel that the people are credible. That's the feeling I get watching this. In talking with my father and discussing, many different UFO sightings, it was quite common for something to appear, disappear, reappear, disappear, and take off, with an incredible acceleration, or as if the phenomenon was obeying earthly physics, as if it had mass, and then at some point have no mass and be able to move with an instant acceleration, or a super fast right angle turn, or disappear and reappear. It really made one think that this is something coming from another dimension, and what my father would call meta-terrestrial, meaning that it's something coming from an unseen world. Or to me, often in trying to understand the motion of many UFOs, it's almost as if it's a projection into our world, and then moving, very similar to the way that if you're projecting an image on an uneven surface, it appears to go slowly and then something crazy fast, depending on what it's being projected on. So, but it's a mystery, no matter how you look at it. I have certainly heard of the notion that the government is in cahoots with aliens or an alien presence, trying to make the populace get used to the whole idea that there are aliens out there and with us. Certainly, if you look at the way that things are being disclosed by the government, or the progression of starting back in the 40s, the progression of Hollywood movies, and particularly if you point at Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was Spielberg got the title of that from my dad's book, The UFO Experience, where he classified UFOs into the categories that they are, Close Encounters of the First, Second, and Third Kind. But if you look at the progression of disclosure, whether it's through Hollywood or through the government, the Navy, it certainly follows that script of, yes, the government is trying to get us used to the idea that aliens are out there, so that when they finally do set down on the White House lawn, we won't freak out.